there's no, if the peace deal doesn't hold, then yes, they should be worried. But, everyone has a boss. Even President Trump has a boss. His boss is the bond market.
Hello and welcome to Cologne. We're here today at our Fun View studio, and with me is Gooden from Ninety One. Hello, nice to have you.
Hello.
Yeah, investors are focusing since the start of the war in Iran, of course, the oil and gas sector. How do you see the current situation in the Middle East, and what's your outlook on this situation right now?
Sure. So the global oil market is about 100 million barrel a day market. About 20 million barrels typically flows through the Strait of Hormuz. There've been some redirection of flows through pipelines. So there's about 12 million barrels a day that is kind of not getting produced at the moment. There's probably also about 5 million barrels of demand destruction as well, or demand rationing. So the net result is we're drawing inventories globally at about 7 million barrels a day. And that is a shock absorber. You can do it for a period, but clearly at some point you run out of inventory. So, a peace deal is kind of underway. There's a lot of hope that it will lead to a rapid improvement in the situation, and look, it should do. The first thing that will happen is there's probably about 60, 70 million barrels of oil that is in tankers that has been stuck there for over 100 days. And so, there'll be a flush, that oil will quickly be transported out, and, that will help the oil price. But to really solve the situation, you need tankers to go in, and those tankers then will drain the local storage, then enabling those fields to kind of start up production. So, look, the situation should get better, but it will take a little bit of time. I think you can probably get back, let's say, 80% of the production over about a 2-month period, but there'll be a residual 1 million barrels, which is difficult to get back. And the whole time inventories are drawing. So I think by the end of the summer, we will have drawn inventories quite aggressively.
And if this situation kind of persists how it is, there will be a point somewhere around early August when the global oil market will kind of run out of supply. Should investors be worried?
Look, I don't think investors... Look, if there's no... if the peace deal doesn't hold, then yes, they should be worried. But, everyone has a boss. Even President Trump has a boss. His boss is the bond market. And, the US 30-year bond went above 5%. And that was the bond market telling the US administration, look, we need to solve this. We need to solve this because inflation is going to get out of control, be it oil price inflation or food inflation as well, because, there's a lot of fertilizer comes through the Strait of Hormuz. So, look, I think it will get sorted. My sense is that, if you kind of look at global oil inventories in the broadest definition, we started the year with about 8 billion barrels. Of that, about 6 billion is just the operating capacity of the system. And there's about 2 billion barrels of proper excess inventory that can be kind of drawn down. And I think by the end of the summer, we'll have drawn about 1.2 billion barrels. And so, as you draw, it puts pressure on the oil price. So, yes, if there's no sustainable peace deal, we should be worried. But I think there will be. The implications of not having a peace deal are too serious for there not to be one.
And in your global natural resources fund, you are overweighting oil and gas. Why is that?
Correct. So look, we were last year we were very overweight precious metals and copper. This year, we're now slightly overweight energy, and we were adding energy in January and February, even before the war, because it looked like this year would be oversupplied in oil markets, but next year it looked like things would tighten. One of the reasons for that is that US shale, which has provided 80-90% of the incremental barrels over the last decade, is running into tougher geology. So we were adding oil and gas in January and February. We didn't expect the war to happen, but it's happened. And so yes, we are now modestly overweight energy.
And how do you generally adjust your portfolio? Because especially for resources, for oil and gas, it's a very interesting market, but of course very volatile. So what's the biggest adjustments you did maybe? And where do you see chances at the moment?
Sure. So one thing just to remember is that, physical commodities are not anticipatory in their nature. They are there just to physically balance a market. So yes, they can be quite volatile. Equities are more kind of anticipatory. They will kind of look through and they'll be less volatile. And look, we invest across three big buckets. So it's kind of energy, metals and mining, and agriculture. I mentioned that last year we were big overweight precious metals and copper. As of today, we're overweight energy, we're overweight fertilizers, and we're overweight aluminium as well. And all three of those asset classes are impacted by what's going on in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. Now, interestingly, since the war has been underway, investors have been a little bit reluctant to invest in those areas. And the reason is that they've been concerned about the overhang from a peace announcement. I think President Trump has said 38 times we're close to a deal. And that creates a natural concern from investors. I don't want to invest just ahead of a peace deal. So with the peace deal, now very close and underway, I think people will sort of start to focus on the hangover. There's a hangover effect because in all of these markets, we've drawn down inventories, and yes, things will get better, but it will take a little bit of a while. So yeah, those are the changes that we've made.
So generally positive, finding a solution in the Iran and an overweight in oil and gas, has Paul Gooden from 91. Thank you very much.
Thank you.